What's new, 802? I'm Becca Hammond, and you're listening to Vermont Talks. Vermont Talks may include graphic or explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. On today's episode, we're talking with Seth Mullins. Seth is an author. He recently wrote a book called The Authors of This Dream. He's a musician, and he's a teacher of life lessons. Let's get started. Let's start at the beginning so we can get a good picture of who you are, Seth.
Sure.
So, welcome to the show, first and foremost. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Seth Mullins, tell me, where are you from originally?
Connecticut, and spent a little time in Maine, and then we moved to Vermont when I was 12. And then I took off for New Mexico at age 20 on a Greyhound bus. The trip took 3 days, had 14 changeovers, had $90 in my pocket and my guitar and a knapsack, various things and clothes, and just kind of wanting to start fresh, I guess. It was a strange period of time. I among other things, and a lot of it just what people typically go through in adolescence. But I had just gotten hit with a curveball, discovering that who I'd grown up thinking was my dad was not, and I had a real father who I'd never met. I'm mentioning this partly because that's also where my own inner search journey kind of began, and which led to a lot of what's in the book.
Yeah, that must have been incredibly shocking to find out, especially at a young age, where you think you're so rock solid. Every kid thinks that they know everything in the life.
I know, and then you're ignorant about this huge central fact to your own life. Yeah, I'm a Leo. It was probably as much a blow to my pride as anything else. Because a lot of other people in the family knew. It was a kind of a conspiratorial secret in a way.
Yeah, that's even worse, kind of.
Yeah.
If it was like mom knew and no one else did, it would have been one thing. Yeah, that's hard. I sympathize. I apologize. That sounds rough, but it's led you on quite the life. So
exactly, and that's something I try to do a lot, is kind of live along the lines of how Saul encourages people to see everything as their creation, as their experiences as self-chosen in one way or another. And I've really come to see that circumstance as self-chosen, because it was such a catalyst for so much else. I mean, it's kind of a generalized statement to make, but I don't think anyone would go on a real deep inward kind of quest or journey unless they had some dissatisfaction with where they were and the reality surrounding them. And for me, it was a lot of confusion. It was like not knowing what anything meant, everything being kind of unreal. Strawberry Fields Forever. It's one of my favorite songs. It was like, that's going to be my funeral song. So it was an impetus to search. Living in Vermont, you have a lot of people who I knew going to school, and I'm not disparaging this at all. It's just very different from my experience. You see a lot of people who think a certain way and maybe even follow in a certain trade or whatever because their father did it and his old man before him did it, and like that avenue was closed to me. It was absolutely closed. So it just was the impetus to find my own way, kind of in all things. So end up questioning everything, and then I had some teachers who were kind of surrogate father figures, and that ended up being unfulfilling and even kind of manipulative. And So that also inspired Saul's philosophy, but in the reverse sense. It informed me of where I didn't want to go. Like what, you know?
Right. You can learn a lot from people that you don't want to aspire to be, which is
Yeah,
interesting because you don't, I don't know how to explain it, when you don't want to be around these people. Like they're not adding to your life in any way, but you can still appreciate there's a lot of layer and depth in all humans, and some empathy and compassion, like looking at it from their perspective. Like, I
right.
see why you do these things, but I really, I don't want to emulate that. Like, oh, if I can see it
Yeah,
when I'm in that position, maybe I could not do it that way.
yeah. I
So,
always I always liked this phrase of Friedrich Nietzsche's. I think it was in Zarathustra, where he just says, "This is my way. The way doesn't exist." I always liked that, and I ended up working with some teachers who believed in the way and the truth with a capital T, and uh, and I always wondered why I never heard or encountered anyone, whether in psychology or alternative spirituality, New Age, any counselors. I never heard of anybody working from the perspective that we're creating our reality. So that's how Saul was born. It was kind of wish fulfillment at first. Like, I really wish I'd met a guy like this who worked like this. And it's like, well,
uh,
if you can't
oh,
find him, I guess you've got to create him.
so I have to give some context here. I don't want to spoil anything in the book, but Saul, the character, he's somewhat of a therapist. I mean, he has the letters after his name, as as you put
Exactly.
it.
As much as he has to be, yeah, to get in the game.
But he's such a shaman. Like, he's teaching principles I've read about, like you said, like new age spirituality principles, very much the hermetic principles, which I don't want to get into too much on the show.
Mm,
And I hope you've read into them. If you haven't, I would be shocked, because what you're teaching and writing about in this book is just so spot on. The idea that you're creating the world around you, the world you live in, is of your own perception. So the way your mind perceives it, you can change your world. And by opening
right.
yourself up to possibilities, suddenly the life you wanted isn't that far away. It's really powerful stuff.
Mm,
And the things you point out about modern psychology and how many people, I don't want to be psychoanalyzed. I know a lot of people don't want to be psychoanalyzed. And I know that the
yeah.
bunny trail of psychoanalysis can do a lot more bad than it can good. So
Yeah.
just as you said, I you I want someone like Saul in my life. Very much so. I would go crazy for someone like Saul in my life. So thank you
Oh,
for creating this character. I'm enjoying this book immensely, and I encourage everyone to read it. It's empowering and uplifting in a time where
mm,
I need it. I think a lot of people do right now. It's been a really rough year and ongoing, months and months
oh
now.
man.
So
Well,
thank
you
you.
you you've been you've been. Thank you for your words, man. You've been in contact with Angel, right? Who
I
kind of
have.
represents me, because I explained to her. I said, I understand story and I understand the artistic side of things. I'm just a dim bulb when it comes to promotion. And she asked me, well, just generally, who do you think this book is for? And all I could think to say was anybody who's looking for some hope. It was like the simplest way I could think to explain it. It's not really genre specific. It's just
Absolutely love the fact that it's about musicians, partially because I'm a musician myself, and partially because I don't know how many people I've had on the show that are musicians, but I think the majority of the people who have come on the show are
Mm,
creative. And that's what we talk
yeah.
about, is just how music releases your soul and how you can just live life in the moment while creating
Mm,
music. So I absolutely love this book for that aspect and all of the other aspects that you've interwoven into the plot line. It's the greatest. So I want to ask you some more questions about yourself and your music. Let's talk about your music a little bit. So you play guitar. Did you sing as well? You must be a poet.
I tried my damnedest. Yeah. I basically sang because we couldn't find anyone else to do it, and also because my songs were so personal. Even if someone wanted to sing with us, they'd say, "Well, these are your sorrows or your longings. You know, I can't like embody this." So, um, I tried. The thing working against me, as far as trying to live as a musician and gigging, is it was just my own introspection. You know, just a little too introverted for that. And as much as I got just such a great kick from being on stage, but I don't know. My performing style is more like those people in the late '60s, like Sid Barrett, who'd be behind a huge light show, just kind of like this creature amidst the lights. And on that level, I could do it, where it's just you let the music do the talking. I'm just terrible with getting up there and how y'all doing tonight, and we're gonna have a good time. You know, I
Yeah,
get so
yeah,
self conscious about that aspect of it,
yep, yeah. Oh, I haven't
and
played out in so long for the exact same reason. I have so many guitars sitting next to me right now, and I can't sing in public anymore. Like I try and I can't, and
uh,
it's self conscious. But I love to play for myself. I don't like other people to see me though anymore. So yeah, I can
hmm.
appreciate that.
Yeah, that started with well, I was playing guitar like 4 hours a day when I was uh, 16, 17. Um, yeah, it was partly love of music and partly because I was getting ready to be catapulted out in the world, and I wanted to avoid having some lousy job. I was like, let's just do this, you know? So I got kind of manic about it for a while. Um, I was writing too, even back then. So I had no social life. Uh, but I started writing songs after I moved to New Mexico, probably like when I was 21. Um, I have a video channel called, well, it's my name, Seth Mullins, author Wanderer. The footage is from a series of hikes that I went on a few years ago. I did the Arizona Trail, well, parts of it, parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Florida, and then the Appalachian Trail, and recorded a lot. So basically, I've been making these little art films out of using the footage and either narrative or just talking about like themes in the book, and then using a lot of that old music. So we did make one CD, but I figured out how to remove the vocals, like how you do with karaoke, and also just play with it so I could take a track and turn it into something that sounds completely different. But I've been using that old music as backdrop in these videos, and it was nice to touch back into it.
Those were some cool videos. I didn't watch through all of them. I just kind of checked through to see what kind of content you were making, and they
Oh,
were
you've been there.
very cool. Yeah, I checked out your YouTube channel. I will
Oh,
link
wow.
all of your links on our show notes page for this so people can go check out these awesome videos that we're talking about. Like you said, they're very artsy. They almost feel like a documentary, but not at all because documentaries are pushy. They're
Uh,
very relaxing. That's the feel I got.
okay,
This is a
good.
yeah, yeah, it's very artistic. I quite enjoyed it. Good content.
Thank you. I've made the mistake of being preachy in the past with past things I've written, and I've sworn off that. Like I'm alert to any sign of where it sounds like I'm trying to tell someone what to believe or how to live, or
Yeah,
it's difficult because I have kind of the healer's instinct too. When I see a lot of suffering around, I want to provide an answer to it. But on the other hand, I've had these negative experiences with groups and teachers who felt they had the answer, and it became very heavy-handed and dogmatic. So
yeah, well, see, that's where the terminology gets confusing, right? I think when you bring the term religion into things, there's answers. There's
yeah,
there's very hard lines. There's answers written in books that that's how they prescribe their thoughts, and that makes sense to some people. I'm not dissing religion, like that helps a lot of people, but some
yeah,
other people that doesn't help them the same way. So yeah, there's I could go on about this for so long, and I don't want to take up the interview
yeah,
with me expressing your ideals. That's the last thing I want to do, is try to express your ideals for you. People should just read this book because it's the way that you tell this story is so helpful to people, because it's not preachy. It's putting a very real
no, it's
character
great.
into a situation that I think a lot of people can relate to. I mean, it's not like a direct relationship for everyone, because I'm not a guy, but a lot of people have experienced abuse and shitty times in their life and have anger issues because of it. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of bad stuff that people carry around from their history, and a lot of people struggle, and a lot of people struggle their whole lives. It doesn't matter how old you are, that there's always personal growth and awareness and happiness, and it's so important. I don't know, this is just the
yeah.
greatest book. I think people should read this. Anyone feeling down should read this book. And
Um,
yeah, so let's get back to New Mexico and your videos, and let's continue on this path. I wanted to ask you, have you had any sort of psychology training yourself in terms of a formal education in that field?
well, part of the involvement I was talking about earlier, I worked with somebody, basically a Jungian psychologist and dream analyst. He kind of put his own spin on it, but I had studied Carl Jung a lot on my own, enough to feel like if I worked with somebody, I'd want it to be with dreams. And so I actually worked with this person two different periods of my life. The first was between like 19 and 23. And then again, after a big gap, uh, started working with him again at like 34. When I went back, there was a whole group that had formed around this kind of dream work. And it had started out with kind of informal meetings, just everybody sharing where they were in their own work. And it became more and more formalized, and they actually got a retreat center. And it felt very different to me. It felt much more rigid, and there was a lot more group think going on. It got fairly cultish, so I jumped ship. But at the same time, yeah, it was definitely an education. I mean, it was a total of I don't know, 6 or 7 years that I did that work and learned a lot. Um, or like I mentioned earlier, I learned where I didn't want to go. The books by Jane Roberts were huge for me. I didn't read them for years because of the name, the Seth material, because I was getting that a lot in New Mexico. Oh, your name's Seth? You read those books? Yeah, that happened to me a lot, and it got irritated and almost kind of like refused to read them for years. But I'm glad I finally did. that was the only thing that I ever came across besides just my own intuitive feeling of, saying that the power to shape your life is in your hands. Anyone I'd ever worked with, there was always the idea that reality was thrust upon you somehow.
Right.
Yeah. In the world of science, it happens supposedly completely by random chance, by accident. And within organized religion, it's, you have a creator kind of removed from the creation. And at least your life has significance because you're worth the devil trying to seduce, so you must be worth something if he's putting in that effort. But I just never encountered the idea that we're the creators. And but I guess I never could fully believe it, so I kept getting involved in these other things. And maybe I just needed to learn it the hard way.
Well,
but I think with something like that, there's layers of belief,
Right. And just reading all the different books that you have and all the experiences you had, it makes sense that you've slowly come to this conclusion and and fully prescribed to it at this point. Because I feel like every spiritual journey kind of tends to end if you stop if you stop trying to take someone else's answer, which for me, that's kind of my point in life. I'm at this point where I don't buy the things I'm being sold. And there's so many things being sold to me that it can be a downer. I think a lot of people have experienced that what is life moment? What is life? And it's not a bad thing to take responsibility for your life. It is a terrifying thing. And I think it's a very double-edged sword for some people because some traditional therapies teach, like CBT is a lot like this, cognitive behavioral therapy. They kind of, sort of.
I like that a little bit. It at least it gives you a sense of where your emotions come from. That you can find that relationship between how you've been thinking and how you're feeling. Like the dream work I was doing, there wasn't that aspect of self-awareness. So it was more an idea of just to stay with the feeling until it transmutes through alchemy into something else. But if you never understand the beliefs or the constant self-talk that's creating that feeling of low expectation or depression or frustration, it's not ever going to change. It's always being recreated.
Right, your belief system. Like what you're the foundation of your thinking. Like if you immediately assume something's bad, you're kind of like cutting off your mental capacity in terms of opening up to those possibilities because you're immediately saying something's bad. And it's really weird when you start digging into why is something bad? Like, why do you really believe that? And you keep digging down deeper, and people believe crazy stuff. People believe that their job defines them. They believe that money defines them. Like, there's many, many different things that don't matter that people really, truly think that that's their whole self-worth. And then when you take that thing away from them, it's world ending. Like they don't know who they are anymore.
Yeah.
It can break people. Like it's not good to make your entire self-worth about a job title. Trust me, I've been there. Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's not good. So
or which party you identify with or
or sports team or whatever.
Yeah.
Or car you drive or thing you have. Like we're all just people. And at a base level, that can really, I don't know, it can bother people if you strip away all the things that separate us and really keep asking the question, who are you? Who are you? What are you made of? defines you? That's a
Yeah.
awful question.
Yeah. Yeah. I've often suspected that certain aspects of our society are like um, deliberately convoluted and obscure and hard to understand so that those involved don't have to risk just being seen how they are. It's um, relationships are defined and there's a hierarchy and or a script.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a
I've
bunch.
had a few jobs with scripts. Uh,
All of human race is this weird hierarchy right now, and in sad ways. It's weird to think about in a lot of ways because a lot of us exist
yeah,
and we're upset about it and we aren't happy and society bothers us and people are just like really unhappy. Like, there's a
yeah,
lot of really insanely unhappy people right now, and I mean it's been happening for a long time, at least in the United States. It's been happening here for a long time because people's situations have slowly gotten worse and worse and worse. And honestly, I think the pandemic kind of was like rock bottom for a lot of people, where people are
right.
losing it. Like, people are losing their minds, people are losing their homes, people lost their jobs. So, hope, having something to grasp onto,
Yeah,
and a little faith in yourself. That's, I think, a really hard thing for a lot of people because people's fundamental belief is that they they can't do it, or they're not good enough, or whatever it is. So it's
yeah.
really hard for them to say, I'm responsible and I can make my life whatever I want it to be. But you truly can.
Well, one of the most pervasive messages you get bombarded with is that you are powerless. And in one way or other, again, like the story of accidental creation that popular science lays out. I mean, how significant could your choices be, really, if you're the end result of colliding dust particles in space and gases and just happen to land with you in this day and age? You're just a leaf at the mercy of the wind if you take on that kind of a philosophy, and the more spiritually oriented belief systems will grant you a soul, but you're tainted from the get go. Whether it's sin or some other word for it.
Yeah, guilt. They use guilt to control people on a very deep, fundamental level.
Yeah,
Which, when you tell people, yeah, you're bad, you're inherently bad, and you have to pay us money and come to our church, and then you
yeah,
might get into heaven, but you're bad.
yeah.
Yeah, it's guilt.
That's a powerful pull. Yeah, because who among us hasn't done things we regret? It's an easy thing to get hooked with.
It's funny they preach love, but then they use guilt to control you.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't. The word love is present in a lot of it, but not much expression of it. Yeah, yeah. I bought into it quite a bit when I was younger. I remember a little phase I went through because one thing I'd heard is that you can't help but sin. So it was a no-win scenario where you have this image of the supreme being as being pure, which that in itself, what does that mean? But
Which I always think is a little funny when God is so terrifying. God's gonna smite you, but he's so pure. Like, what is purity then?
he's responsible for a lot more deaths than Satan in the Bible.
Oh, he was
But
scary. Oh yeah, if you actually read the Bible, sit down
smite,
and read
smite, smite.
stories. Oh, and
I
it's
did.
scary. It's like fire, and it's not good. It's not, like flooding the whole world, like very, very deliberately.
Yeah, you
Murder
aren't quite
everyone.
panning out like I thought. Let's start over, reset.
Oh man.
Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that
I did this game where because hearing that it was almost like a challenge. Nobody can avoid sinning, so I tried not to. And then I'd be like, damn, I just cussed at my cousin, And I blew it. I'd count them, I'm up to 10 now already today. I was like, I don't know, 8, 9.
Oh yeah, anything you did, if you coveted, like if you were jealous of something, what child isn't jealous of seeing anything? Like, that's cool. They want to see it. They want to have fun. Like, come on.
And even if you don't act on it, that doesn't let you off the hook. Just thinking it is enough.
Right. You thought about your neighbor's wife. How dare you?
Is as good as following through.
Yeah, like you're a sinner now. Well, yeah, that's it. And it's just so easy to be a sinner. It's so easy to have to feel bad about that.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to count them all. That takes some willpower.
I was determined. Prove them all wrong.
So, how many different bands did you play in? Did you have one main band? Did you travel and try different bands?
I had a main partner, my friend Ray. We played a lot together in various formations. And we started out, I was playing electric guitar and he was on drums. And then we had a bass player for a while. And the chemistry was really good. We had just only been playing for like 2 years at that point. So it was more enthusiasm than talent. But there was some talent. And then there was a gap, but Ray and I ended up playing later on. And that's when we made the CD. By then, we were both writing songs. He was playing bass, I was playing acoustic guitar, mainly because it's easier to just do your own thing if you have to. If I had an acoustic and I could sing, I could just go do a gig and I could play for people regardless of whether I was able to find other like-minded people to play with.
Right.
So it was always a problem getting actually a full band together. I did a lot more either on my own or just us as a duo.
Yeah, I've been there. It's hard to get a good band together, especially people who are dedicated enough to make it work in any.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jam bands are easy to throw together.
Right. I always got bored with that because I wanted to do something with it, But I also realized that the things I have to say kind of require a lot of space. So that was a big part of why writing became a priority. I can't say the kind of things I say in the novel in a 3-minute song or even a 20-minute song. It takes a lot of space to develop it. So that was kind of the appeal. That was part of what made me change.
Band called? Did you tell me that? I didn't catch what the band was called. Can you hear your music anywhere? I didn't see any music that I could listen to online.
Oh, me. We called ourselves Thieves of Fire, which I'm going to play on in the next book. But yeah, there's nowhere to go except my videos where I use it.
Okay, all right. So I have to go through the whole thing, sit down and have a chill session. What genre would you say?
If you really want, I can email you.
You definitely should. I won't post it anywhere, I promise.
Okay, yes, please. I wasn't a good singer even at the best of times, so...
Everyone hates it when I ask what genre their music is, but I have to ask because it's a podcast. If you were going to describe your music or pick someone that it sounded like...
Yeah.
Or what?
Closest people I could think of are Syd Barrett, because it was fairly whimsical and kind of light and magic, and Nick Drake for the introspection of it, I guess, and it was all fairly kind of quiet and intimate. At least that's the way I wanted to go with it.
Right, thoughtful music.
Yeah, and with the space to really hear it. I've been disappointed at times, even seeing bands I liked a lot, just with so much being lost in the volume, you know?
Yes. Oh, people. I mean, I guess buildings are not built well for having bands or musicians in them very
Yeah.
often anymore. Most modern buildings are terrible with acoustic. Like, I don't know what these people are thinking when they design music halls these days. It's absolutely terrible. But I have experienced bands
And then
that
they name them after corporations.
right. And yeah, the poor bands just sound so they sound flat or they sound lost or it's just way too
Mm.
loud. And yeah, I've definitely been very disappointed with audio quality in the past before, and especially bands that are so precise about that. Most of them, I think, bring their own audio engineers who
Right.
try and make
Yeah.
it work for the space because my favorite band, my favorite metal band that plays very light, airy music. They've switched from being death metal to like very pretty music all of a sudden. And they, I think, brought their own sound engineer because they actually sounded good. I was expecting it to be kind of
Mm.
terrifying because they're so death metally that I figured they'd tune the sound to that, but they managed to sound great. So sometimes they can pull it through, but yeah, a lot of
Mm.
times the light emotional parts of songs get really lost and they're just not well represented. You almost have to wear
Yeah.
earphones to really get into those moments. I love Pink Floyd, so those moments in Pink Floyd and a lot of those really experimental bands,
Yeah.
you gotta have the headphones on or you kind of lose the experience.
Mm. But you go pretty heavy sometimes too, huh?
Yeah, I love heavy metal. I think a lot of people go through the pretentious I love heavy metal stage and like that really intricate technical metal, and I love it. I don't know. A lot of people seem to go through that. I've kind of gotten away from it and gotten more because I love Pink Floyd and I love that kind of metal, but I really like just prog
Yeah.
rock and
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know, progressive rock, Rush lyrics. Poetry lyrics I can sit and think about and listen to a song over and over again. And
I know people who think Neil Peart is the greatest lyricist ever, and people who think he's the worst lyricist ever. It's funny how divisive that guy is.
he
it,
definitely
it just depends on what you want
oh
from the
exactly.
song. Yeah.
Exactly. If you want to forget all your problems, I don't think Neil Peart's your man. I
He'll kick
guess.
you scratching your head into the wee hours.
Yeah, just way too thoughtful, like poetry put to music. I love music in all its forms. I'm a fangirl for music, I guess, in general,
I
especially
hear that.
local stuff. Really, I get excited about it just because I love seeing live bands play. I've always just
Yeah, I haven't done that in a while.
I'm excited. We're having DIY shows. They're starting up outdoors, social distance
Hmm.
with masks on,
Yeah.
but it's coming back. So you should definitely come up to Burlington for some shows. There's some stuff in Randolph. I do remember some people playing somewhere. It wasn't very big. I do remember there being musicians that would
Well,
come.
I went somewhere. I went to an outdoor thing
Yes.
was last summer. Yeah.
Nice.
I
Oh,
actually went with my client. I work with a autistic young man, and he loves to dance. I mean, seriously, like he slam dances. So
that's awesome. Music can
yeah,
help.
it's a good outlet.
Yeah. Oh, it kind of make you tear up thinking about how much music can help people that some people, especially autistic people, really can't communicate verbally easily. And
Yeah,
to see how they open up to music and how much they love it, and it
yeah,
speaks to them in a way that it doesn't seem like we can. It's very powerful. That's great to hear.
yeah, yeah. And I already was aware of this, but it reminded me of how it really is a universal language, you know, because yeah, without any kind of a mental filter, he just gets it and responds to it.
Fantastic. And even animals understand music. I feel like it's one of our most natural, back to our very deepest roots in this world, where rhythm and just repetition has been part
Yeah.
of humans for so long. And the birds, birds sing. And I know animals respond to music. It's amazing watching how animals can, you can teach a snake to dance to music. It's fantastic.
Mm, yeah.
It really is a universal. I love that phrase. It's a universal language. So what do you hope that people gain from your books when they read them?
You just said it. You just used the word hope. Yeah, hope and a sense of empowerment. It really works against all the messages you get to the contrary, that uh, we're just at the mercy of our upbringing or our society or a wrathful God or however you define it. And hopefully it comes across how you could actually go about it too. I tried to get into the nuts and bolts of see, this is the kind of book that the story can't be separated from my own philosophy, because Brandon's breakthroughs happen to the extent that he takes personal responsibility, looks at his own beliefs, and he's able to change his thinking. And then you can see in the story how something opens up as a result of that. So when I say to give people hope, I don't mean it just in an abstract sense, but also something you actually do something with. I think there is a practical side of it where you may not be a musician or somebody who's lost his mom and been beaten by his alcoholic father or anything. Your particulars of your life may be very different, but you can get the gist of seeing how he worked that through could be applied to anybody.
Yeah, his thought process, the resistance. I think that's one of the things that's really spoken to me the most is I don't accept that. It makes me really angry. I'm not okay. I just rejected that and I'm mad at Saul. And even though he respects the hell out of that guy,
Yeah.
Saul's like his dude.
Yeah.
He's mad, like he's pissing him off and he's pointing out things that are just too raw and too tender. And those moments that people don't want to admit these kind of things. And a lot of people, when you scratch at the surface of something like that, they bounce away and they forget about it. So it's interesting to see how Brandon is forced into addressing this instead of Saul just pissing him off and walking away and forgetting about everything that he suggested that was just too much for him. Like, accountability is so hard. That idea. I'm not accountable for my life. That's my father's fault. He beat me, or, whatever the situation is. People can't handle that. But Brandon, he doesn't handle it, but then he works through it.
Until he can. Yeah.
Until he can. And it's very powerful, and it really just, it makes you think. It kind of forces you to think, because you're just the reader, right? You're just absorbing Brandon's life. But you can't not think about these things in a deeper way while you read this book. Like, you can't not kind of think about your own perception a little bit. Like, accountability. Like, like my life. You can't really appreciate the story. Like, you're not paying attention if you're not really working through this stuff and putting yourself in Brandon's shoes. It's kind of teaching empathy at the same time. It's very powerful. It's a good book. I hope everyone reads this book. There will be links in the show notes page to this book. So I really wanted to ask this too, because you've written 7 novels? How many novels do you have?
Well, technically this would make number 9, like the Beatles song, but it's actually the only book really in existence of mine now. Aside from if you want to try to track down something secondhand or, through Amazon or something. But because Edge of the Known was written, 6 books were written. And one of the things that happened is I'd been living with the story by that point for like 7 or 8 years. And then I went on that long hike, it's out in the wilderness, a lot of time to think. And the scope of the whole thing and where it could go grew tremendously in my mind, where I could, So basically what happened, I didn't have the heart, though, to start over. I'd just written 6 books, and each time really tried to push them, really tried to promote them, and it never went very far. I just couldn't imagine going back. But then when I contacted JKS Communications and just wrote them a kind of an introductory letter explaining how I have a hard time with promotion and this and that, one of the first things they proposed to me was doing a new edition. The rationale being that people like to cover something that's new. A book that's 6 years old isn't news. So I understood the rationale, and at the same time, it was like all that material that I've been holding on to in the back of my mind, but not looking at too much, just kind of rushed to the fore. Like, here's the opportunity. If you're going to do this, do it right. Do it like the way you see it now.
The opportunity presented itself.
Yeah. And it's actually the authors of this dream is really a combination of the first 2 books, actually, because I didn't feel like the first one really had a climax. The climax didn't happen until the second. So, and when you promote a series, it always comes down to the first book. No matter how long the series is, you got to keep going back to the first one to try to, interest people, because that's where everyone's going to start. So,
right. Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, it is a huge undertaking. Wow. Yeah. The trepidation of having to start over again must have been ouch.
Emotionally more than anything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I guess I can't compare because I haven't read the original. This book is great, though. I was very impressed to start reading it because I didn't know what to expect, and I was hooked. Like, I wasn't expecting to sit down and read 50 pages out of that book in the first go. I love to read, but I didn't expect to just kind of get hooked into this story. Like, oh, I like this kid. I love the book Fat Kid Rules the World. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
It's actually targeted at like middle school age kids. You can read it in like an hour and a half or less, probably.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a similar story to this in some way, in a very like loose picking sort of way, because it's about a kid who becomes a musician and meets basically a Kurt Cobain type, and also has this like deep spiritual, emotional, just finding himself journey. And it's, like I said, it's a very short book, and it's very quickly written. And I was like, this is like Fat Kid Rules the World, but it's for adults. Like, got substance. And it's one of my favorite books of all time. I highly recommend you take a brief hour or so to check out that book at some point in time, because it's not the same lessons by any means, because I feel like these lessons that you're teaching, like you said, they're a culmination of a lot of different experiences. It's a belief system built on learning a lot and understanding and just coming to a point of equilibrium.
Learning what didn't work, mostly, in my case.
Right, well, that's it.
I'm from the beatings on the head school of spirituality.
You must have read books like Siddhartha, and that's the journey that people must take to become enlightened and to reach a point where they can just be and be okay and content. And it's such a powerful concept, and I love it so much, and I love it tied to music. Like, my favorite things are these types of spiritual, and I don't know the word spiritual's right. It's a philosophy. I guess it's a philosophy of life to live by. It's just so fantastic. I keep on just praising it. I really want people to read this book, though. So, last question. What's your favorite part about Vermont?
Man, it might be the rivers, actually. I was just thinking about that recently. I like a lot of the kinds of rivers we have here, where you have the shallows and the swimming holes and the little beachheads. So when I was out hiking, I saw either desert or in a lot of places, you have the kind of really deep, slow rivers. You can't really tell if they're even moving. I don't know. I like the water here, and I do struggle with the winters a lot, especially the darkness. But there is one aspect of that I actually like. With writing, I can hole up and sort of go into a right brain trance for hours without feeling guilty about it, because it's just a dismal, really cold day out there. I'm not missing anything, where it's more challenging in the summer to sit down and do the work when you're hearing the birds chirping, the sun shining through the window, and it's 80 degrees and there's a nice swimming hole just a 10-minute walk away from me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also struggle with the winters here. I love it here, but cabin fever, it gets everybody in Vermont, I think. It just kind of sucks after a while. It's about March and we're all done with it. It's been too long, too dark.
Yeah. You never know how the winter's going to go. Like, this one wasn't bad. But then there's those that start in like late October and don't really end till May. And it's a bit much.
Agreed. Yeah, this was a very weirdly mild winter. It didn't feel like we really had much of winter at all.
I was totally grateful.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't have to drive anywhere. I'm good with good with it not snowing on me. Okay, well, thank you so much, Seth, for coming on the show and for talking to me today. I'm so grateful. I'm just grateful that I got to read this book. I'm grateful that I got to meet you and talk to you. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and thank you, Seth, for coming on the show. The show notes for this episode will be located at vermonttalks.com/24. Go check out that book, seriously. It's pretty powerful stuff. The Authors of This Dream by Seth Mullins. Subscribe to the show. I made a YouTube account if you're into listening on YouTube and subscribing to videos there. Please do so. Have a great day. That's what was new in the 802. The Vermont Talks show music was created by Jason Baker. Thank you so much, Jason, for making the music. You can check out his website at jbakervt.com.